3 names, 1 current prana, Qi, Pneuma, 3 words, 3 ancient traditions, 3 seemingly different concepts that confuse modern seekers. But here is what most people miss. Different cultures use different languages, but they were pointing to the same lived experience. A current you can feel, direct, and regulate. Not 3 separate ideas, not competing belief systems. One animating force mapped by 3 civilizations using the same fundamental mechanism: breath plus attention plus circulation. The confusion exists because we treat these as metaphysical concepts when they were always experiential descriptions. This video reveals the single current beneath 3 cultural names. Once you recognize it, the complexity dissolves. Before examining each tradition, we must understand why ancient cultures needed to map this current at all. The pre-scientific map. Why cultures described experience. The modern error is treating prana, Qi, and Pneuma as poetic symbols rather than experiential realities. Before MRI machines, cultures described experience, not mechanisms. What we now call physiology, they described as living currents. These were descriptive models based on direct observation, not mystical invention. Understanding their unity requires no belief system, only attention to lived sensation. The cross-cultural consistency demands investigation. When 3 unrelated traditions describe the same phenomenon using breath, attention, and circulation, pattern recognition becomes necessary. Western science now maps mechanism, blood flow, neural pathways, oxygen exchange. These traditions documented experience, the sensation of warmth moving through the body, the clarity that follows controlled breathing, the vitality that circulates when attention follows breath. The distinction matters. Mechanism explains how the body functions. Experience describes what practitioners consistently felt. Each tradition emphasized a different aspect of the same underlying current. The Indian tradition focused on intake and regulation. The Chinese system emphasized circulation and flow. The Greek framework centered on animation and inspiration. 3 lenses, 1 current. The Indian tradition focused its attention on the intake and regulation of this current through breath. Prana, the current through intake and regulation. Prana is defined in classical yoga texts as the cosmic energy absorbed and regulated through breath. The emphasis is on intake. Pranayama techniques were designed to control the absorption of this animating force. The breath becomes the vehicle, attention becomes the director, the current becomes accessible. The nadis are the channels through which prana circulates, not blood vessels, not nerves. An internal landscape of energy flow that practitioners mapped through consistent observation. The relationship between breath and awareness is direct. Prana becomes accessible when attention follows the breath. Inhale through the nose. Feel expansion in the chest. Notice how awareness amplifies sensation. This is experienced, not imagined. The practice reveals what the theory describes. Prana sustains both gross physical functions and subtle mental operations. The yogic understanding was never that prana powered only the body or only the mind. It animated both. Breath carried something more than oxygen. The 3-part mechanism becomes clear. Breath provides the medium. Attention directs the flow. Circulation distributes the current. Prana was never purely metaphorical in yogic texts. It was a functional description of what practitioners consistently felt. Different pranayama techniques manipulate the same underlying current in specific ways. Kapalabhati emphasizes rapid intake and forceful exhale. Nadi Shodhana alternates nostrils to balance flow. Ujjayi creates restriction to intensify awareness. Different methods, same current. The intensity of sensation varies between practitioners and between sessions. But the principle remains constant. Breath carries a current. Attention amplifies it. Regulation directs it. The yogic tradition developed elaborate maps of this current. 5 primary pranas governing different regions and functions. Chakras marking concentration points along the central channel. Kundalini describing the current in its most concentrated and powerful form. But the foundation never changed. Breath, attention, circulation. You do not need to accept the cosmology to recognize the current. Inhale slowly through the nose. Hold the breath for 3 counts. Exhale completely. Notice what remains after the breath stops. That subtle presence, that faint warmth or tingling. That is what the yogis called prana. While the Indian tradition emphasized intake, the Chinese system focused on the circulation and movement of this same current, qi. The current through circulation and flow. Qi is defined in traditional Chinese medicine as the vital flow permeating all things. Not limited to the human body, present in nature, present in the cosmos, but most practically mapped within the living organism. The emphasis is on circulation. Qi must move freely through the body to maintain health and vitality. Stagnation produces disease. Obstruction creates pain. Free flow sustains life. The meridians are the channels through which qi flows. 12 primary meridians, connecting organs and systems. 8 extraordinary vessels, governing deeper reserves. Parallel to, but distinct from blood vessels and nerves. These channels were mapped through consistent clinical observation. Acupuncturists noted where pressure relieved symptoms, where needles produced effects in distant locations, where blockages manifested as tenderness or heat. The practices designed to maintain circulation reveal the underlying principle. Tai Chi and Qigong were not exercise systems in the modern sense. They were methods to keep qi moving through the meridians without obstruction. Movement initiates flow. Breath sustains it. Attention guides direction. Inhale, attention rises up the spine. Exhale, attention settles down the front. This is not visualization. This is directing awareness along established pathways. Qi is defined by movement, not intensity. The current becomes tangible through consistent practice. Not dramatic, not mystical, a subtle sense of internal flow. Warmth traveling along specific routes, tingling at points where meridians intersect. Qi was diagnosed through pulse reading and observable symptoms. Traditional practitioners felt for qualities in the pulse that indicated excess, deficiency, or stagnation. They observed tongue coating, skin temperature, and behavioral patterns. Qi was treated as functionally real because the effects of its movement or blockage were consistently observable. The 3-part mechanism operates identically to the Indian model. Breath initiates movement. Attention guides direction. Circulation completes the circuit. Acupuncture points mark locations where qi concentrates or can be redirected. Not arbitrary, not symbolic. Practitioners discovered through trial and observation that stimulating specific points produced reliable effects. The maps were refined over centuries of clinical practice. Different Qigong methods work with the same underlying current, emphasizing different circulation patterns. Some focus on gathering qi in the lower abdomen. Some emphasize circulating it through the microcosmic orbit. Some direct it to specific organs for therapeutic purposes. The method varies. The current remains constant. Qi was never considered supernatural by its practitioners. It was the animating principle they observed in all living processes. Plants growing, blood circulating, breath moving, thought arising. All manifestations of qi in motion. The Western tendency to dismiss qi as metaphor misses what traditional practitioners were describing. Not belief, not poetry. Consistent somatic experience documented across generations. You do not need to accept the cosmology to recognize the circulation. Stand comfortably. Inhale slowly, while raising attention up the back of the body. Exhale slowly, while lowering attention down the front. Repeat for 30 seconds. Notice the subtle sense of internal movement. That loop, that circuit, that is what the Chinese mapped as qi. The Greek tradition took a different approach, focusing on how this current animates and inspires consciousness itself. Pneuma, the current through animation and inspiration. Pneuma is defined in Greek philosophy as the animating spirit or breath of life, the principle that distinguishes living beings from inanimate matter. The emphasis is on animation. Pneuma was what caused the body to move, the heart to beat, the mind to think. Without pneuma, the organism became corpse. With pneuma, life manifested. Early Greek anatomists connected pneuma to the nervous system and vital functions. Galen described pneuma moving through arteries and nerves, carrying both physical vitality and rational capacity, not metaphor. Explanatory framework for observable phenomena. The relationship between breath and inspiration reveals the connection, the word itself. Inspiration, to breathe in, to be filled with spirit. The Greeks recognized that breath carried something beyond air, something that enlivened and clarified consciousness. Pneuma linked the physical body to rational thought. The Stoic philosophers practiced breath regulation to influence mental states. They recognized the bidirectional relationship. Controlled breathing produced mental calm. Mental focus refined breathing patterns. Inhale gently. Exhale longer than inhale. Attention rests in the whole body. Pneuma was described as that which animates and inspires, not located in one region, pervading the entire organism. The three-part mechanism operates consistently. Breath provides substance. Attention creates presence. Circulation sustains animation. Pneuma became the foundation for later Western concepts of spirit and vital force. The Latin spiritus, the medieval understanding of life force. The vitalist theories that preceded modern biochemistry, all descendants of the Greek pneuma. The Greek model, like the Indian and Chinese, was mapping the same internal experience using available language. Three traditions, three emphases, one underlying current accessible through the same mechanism. Conclusion: the single current and what it changes, prana, qi, and pneuma, are not three ideas. They are three cultural descriptions of one animating current. You do not need to adopt a new belief system. You need to notice the common thread. Breath plus attention plus circulation. The mechanism that every tradition recognized and refined. If you have felt calm in breathwork, flow in movement, or clarity in stillness, you have already met this current. The names are secondary, the experience is primary. Advanced practices like Kundalini and the microcosmic orbit work with this same foundation. They amplify and direct what you have already felt in simple breathing exercises. Once you recognize the current, the names stop mattering. Practice becomes simpler. Until next time, keep breathing.